Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and just a little clarification for this Monday evening. You see here, I'll go and put the thumbnail back up. I rarely do this. There's the thumbnail. I've got a little gray t-shirt on. I've got my Tennessee hoodie on today, not just support the Vols. Go Tennessee, go Vols. Hope Florida loses tonight to LSU. But I got to admit to y'all, it is freezing in this studio. So I'm just trying to listen, man. I'm just trying to keep warm. Okay. Cut you guys some slack. You know what happens. I didn't think on June 26th I'd be freezing in the studio, but hey, it happens sometimes. I guess that's what happens when your studio is in the basement. But we do have a loaded show on tap for you guys tonight. I'm going to get into the Draymond Green negotiations in just a second. Very, very fascinating, revolving around the, hey, should Golden State pay Draymond $100 million? What does the other suitors around Draymond, the Mavs and the Grizzlies, what does that say about Draymond? All of the above, as well as one team that I think is actually making a very strategically intelligent move to try and hurt Golden State, even if they do keep Draymond Green. I'll get into that in just a second. Also, going to get into Dennis Rodman says something crazy, nuts about Larry Bird. Get into that later in the show. I guess he still hasn't gotten over some of those 80s battles that the Celtics and the Pistons used to have. Also, DeAndre Ayton, it appears he's staying with the Phoenix Suns long term. I'll get into that in just a second. I actually think it's a smart move by Phoenix, a rare one these days. So like I said, we got a loaded show on tap. Let's see, do we have another? Oh yeah, Damian Lillard. What are we talking about? Damian Lillard looks like he's going to leave Portland. He and his representation either met today or are going to meet today to discuss his future with the team. And new reports by Chris Haynes and other sources say that Miami is looking more and more likely. So I'll get into that in the second topic of today's show. But first, Draymond Green is a free agent. That's my guy. I love Draymond. You know, lifetime Golden State Warriors fan here. So Draymond, I've always been a Draymond Green fan. And reading reports surrounding Draymond Green's market has given me a little bit of, it's one of my favorite words, vindication. Because all I've heard the last, especially 3 to 4 years or so, maybe I guess it's KD left around that time, that there's been just nothing but hate thrown at the Golden State Warriors. I don't appreciate it that much. I know they don't as well. But the hate thrown at Draymond has been Mr. Triple Single, which was a phrase coined by Charles Barkley. Mr. Triple Single, oh, what does he score? 7, 8 points a game. He's not that valuable. He's holding Steph back, and he's overrated, and he's only popular just because he gets technical fouls and he plays for the Golden State Warriors. Well. We got a report here by Bleacher Report saying the Sacramento Kings, they are interested in Draymond Green. I'll get into that in just a moment. Oh, the Dallas Mavericks, they are also interested in Draymond Green. Even the Memphis Grizzlies, of all teams, they are interested in Draymond Green's services. Not to even mention the teams that have been rumored. These are teams that have been reportedly linked to Draymond Green. Forget the teams that are rumored. The Pistons, they've been rumored for a while because Draymond Green's from Saginaw, Michigan. He's talked about before, like maybe going to play for the Pistons at some point in his career. So the Pistons are rumored. The Lakers are rumored to be interested in Draymond Green. But these teams, Memphis, Dallas, and Sacramento, are the 3 teams we know they're interested in acquiring Draymond Green in free agency. Now, I've been clear this whole time. Certainly, and I was skeptical about this until I heard about all the press conferences, the exit interviews with all the Warriors players and coaches after the second round loss to the Lakers. It sounded like from Kerr, from Steph, and most importantly from Draymond, he wants to come back. Mike Dunleavy Jr. was saying in a press conference, like, we're going to pull out all the stops. He wants to be here. We want him to be here. We'll make it happen. But I just think it's interesting that, everybody, he's overrated. Funny people are evidently willing to pay him a lot of money to go play for them. That's neither here nor there. The question, though, is, it's a question that Draymond, a content creator himself, the Draymond Green Show, the second best basketball podcast. I love Draymond, but my man JJ Redick, Old Man the Three, fantastic basketball podcast. Zach Lowe's got a good one as well. Oh, the Draymond Green Show is absolutely in that mix. But Draymond's a content creator himself and a very, very smart negotiator. So there were And on First Take and all these other shows, there was discussion, hey, is Draymond Green worth $100 million for 3 years? Because that's what all the reports coming out of Golden State are saying. It's likely going to be a 3-year deal, which I think is perfect, by the way, because it lines up with the end of Steph's peak prime years. Is Draymond Green worth $100 million for 3 years? And Draymond put on his Instagram stories, he like reposted on his stories and said something along the lines of absolutely. So he's, listen, he's driving a hard bargain for Golden State. They're going to have to meet. And there's this whole narrative about, he's, again, you got the Mr. Triple Single. You got all these, he was once great. He had that great 2016 Game 7 in the NBA Finals where he scored, I think it was like 32, 14, and 9. Greatest game Draymond's ever played, unfortunately, coming in a losing effort to the Cavs. But, he's an all-star years ago. Like, he's not that same player anymore. He's not that impactful to the Golden State Warriors. Well, the stats, the evidence would actually say otherwise. Let's look at the Golden State Warriors with Draymond Green just this last season. Let's look at this real quick on this little graphic I created here. Okay, offensive rating is 117.7. That would be tied for 4th in the NBA. Defensive rating. Now, the Warriors were not as good defensively last year as they have been in recent years. It's really the biggest reason they didn't win the finals this year. They were sorry defensively compared to past years where they were in the top 5. Defensive rating with Draymond Green, 114.8. That's tied for 19th. That's no good. They'll improve on that next season. Points per game. Now, I'm hearing, Draymond can't score, so I guess he's not a good offensive player, right? Wrong. Warriors are 2nd in points per game, 119.9. When Draymond Green is in the starting lineup or in the lineup in general. But when they're missing Draymond Green, it's an entirely different story. Their offensive rating goes from 4th to 27th without Draymond Green. Offensive rating goes to 111.1. Defensive rating goes from 19th, which ain't great, to 27th, which is horrible. 118.4. Points per game. This is the biggest drop-off. The Warriors 2nd in points per game in the NBA with Draymond Green. Without him, 27th. 110.9 points per game without Draymond Green. This has everything on the offensive side of the basketball, has everything to do with the fact that Draymond Green has the chemistry with Steph and Clay, and he gets other guys set up with good looks. Defensively, he's one of the few players in the entire league that can guard 1 through 5, every single position. He can take Damian Lillard, for example, or he can take Anthony Davis. Does that mean he's going to stop him? No, those are great players. But he's going to make it tough on him. He is, after all, a defensive player of the year. He is, after all, he was first team all defense in 2021, second team all defense in 2022, would have been first team had he not gotten injured, second all defensive team a year ago. So yes, Draymond is incredibly important to the Golden State Warriors. And to repeat what Coach Kerr said, what Steph Curry said, the Warriors are not championship contenders if Draymond Green is not on the basketball team healthy. It's as simple as that. The impact, I don't know how many examples we have of this over the last decade, or really throughout this dynasty, where Draymond's not been there. You look at the 2016 finals. Why is it that everybody always says, if Draymond Green doesn't get suspended for Game 5 of 2016, Golden State wins that series, the Cavs don't come back from 3-1. Now, I'm one who subscribes to this opinion, but in fairness, before Cleveland gets mad at me, I also say if Kevin Love and Kyrie had been healthy in 2015, y'all would have won. So chill out. Point being, in the games Draymond's missed, in the playoffs, in the regular season, doesn't even look like the same basketball team. Even 2 years ago, when Draymond was the front runner for defensive player of the year, and believe it or not, folks, y'all who don't think he's very good, All right. So looks like we're dealing with more connection issues. This is the second time in the last. Let's see if I can set this up. Hang on. Does that work? Okay. So, oh, wait a minute. I think we're back. All right. Wi-Fi went out for just a second. I'm going to try and get us back on here. There we go. All right. Sorry about that, guys. That was gave us some real connection problems once again. So apologize for that. Point being, get back to my original argument. Draymond Green was an all-star in 2022, right? Draymond got hurt in January, had a back injury. The Warriors were on pace to be the best defense since the 2007 San Antonio Spurs at the time that he got hurt. When he went out, middle of the pack. So this argument that Draymond is no longer important to the Golden State Warriors is simply not a factual one. If you want to make that argument, that's fine if we're not taking facts into consideration. Draymond is crucially important to the Golden State Warriors, to their success, both offensively and defensively. I will have to say, though, and I got some comments here. I'll get to those in just a second. I will have to give the Sacramento Kings a lot of credit, though, and I'm serious when I say this. So, Sacramento is reportedly among non-Warriors teams the most interested in Draymond Green. Now, do I think they'd love to have him? Yes, I do. But I also think this is a very strategic move by their front office, very smart move by their front office. Remember during the draft Thursday night, got to do the draft show with my man Mike Guido, had an absolute blast. Remember when the Kings traded Rashawn Holmes and they freed up like $30 million in cap space? That's about, more or less, what Draymond Green's going to make this season. And in the coming seasons as well. They're saying, if we add Draymond, great. That's a big addition for us. If we don't, just our interest drives up the price on Draymond. So Sacramento knows, hey, if we want to, again, Golden State beat us last year in the first round. If we're going to compete, if we're going to try and make a run to, first of all, win a playoff series and maybe go further than that, we got to make things harder on them. So by Golden State potentially paying Draymond more than they would have originally paid him, all of a sudden, maybe they don't add a guy like Brook Lopez has been rumored to the Golden State Warriors. There's potential of that happening. Maybe some other 3-and-D guys that they need. I got to give a lot of credit. That's a smart, Sacramento's not been a smart organization for a very long time. That was a very smart, calculated move on their part. So credit to them. I was also thinking too, before I get to the comments, I was thinking about this too, that, how do you think Domantas Sabonis feels about all of this? Like, the guy that stomped on my chest, you now want me to be his teammate. You want us to have to get along. Oh, that's funny. I got a kick out of that. I don't know why. All right, got some comments here. Let's see. My man Parnell's in the comments. What's going on, Parnell? He says they traded Poole for CP3 because of Poole's inconsistency and Ice Spice. Ice Spice is probably like the 5th or 6th biggest reason they traded him, Parnell. No, the inconsistency, to me, that's a distant second. Honest to God, I think that's a distant second. Jordan Poole's young. He's going to be inconsistent. That happens. Matter of fact, I'll put inconsistency in third place for why they moved on from him. Number 1, immaturity, challenging the Warriors hierarchy, be it Steph, Draymond, or Kerr, having numerous issues with multiple veteran guys in the locker room. That's a big problem. Can't have that. And secondly, a Russell Westbrook level of basketball IQ. I mean, I said on Thursday's show, he was our version of Russell Westbrook, except a better shooter, but a less talented athlete. Both have horrendous basketball IQs. Then third would be the inconsistency, and I think, somewhere in that range would be Ice Spice. I don't want to put too much on her. This ain't her fault. Parnell also said Draymond to Memphis would be nice. Memphis likes the fact that Draymond has that dog in him and can be a mentor as well as smart. Definitely something Memphis needs. Well, Memphis needs a lot of things. Draymond, we talked about Memphis adding veterans. You want to talk about the perfect veteran to add. Now, Draymond's not going to Memphis. Not with the history they have there, but in a different world, if their paths never crossed the way that they did the last few years, yeah, I think it'd make all the sense in the world for the Grizzlies. From a leadership standpoint, from a defense standpoint, from an offensive standpoint. That'd be great. Especially with them not having Tyus Jones. You know how valuable Draymond Green be to them then? And Parnell says, love the stats. I appreciate that, Parnell. I've tried to incorporate, over the past half year or so, trying to incorporate more and more graphics to the show, trying to, give a visual. Again, I'm a very visual learner. That's just me personally. I don't know about you, but I think if you see it, you see the numbers right in front of you on the screen for everybody to look at. I think it drives home the point further and it makes more sense. But yeah, Draymond's going to get paid. That's what we do know. And I have no doubts whatsoever. We're going to do a free agent special on Carving It Up Live on Friday, by the way. Just a little bit of news there. 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, same time as usual on Friday. But free agency, it's perfect. It's perfect. Free agency in the NBA kicks off right as our show starts at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific time. So we'll be here breaking down all the biggest deals. Going to have some guests on the show. Looking forward to that. But I anticipate that early on, the Draymond deal will be done. I'll be talking about it. I'll be celebrating. May even wear my Draymond Green jersey once again to the show on Friday. But there you go. Draymond's going to get paid. That's what we do know. Hopefully, this is the second time in the last, 5 shows this has happened? About 5 shows that this has happened where the Wi-Fi has totally went kaput. I don't know what's going on. Maybe need to look at that. And see what usually happens if I go out, please hang with me because I'll usually, use my phone for the time being, just log into the streaming service that I use and record and do the best podcast I can, albeit maybe it doesn't sound the greatest. But second topic, this is the biggest story of the NBA offseason is what's going to happen with Damian Lillard. Obviously, we know Portland drafted Scoot Henderson with the 3rd overall pick in the draft. I think Scoot is going to be phenomenal with their other young core guys, with Shaedon Sharpe, with Anthony Simons, good developmental coach in Chauncey Billups. I think Portland's got a really good young core that they need to build around now because Portland is in as far as rebuilding teams, every other rebuilding team, be it Detroit, Orlando, Houston, well, maybe not Houston. Houston had a great draft, but point being, they are very envious of the Portland Trailblazers. Where it's like, okay, you've got 3 really talented young players. You're going to stink next year. So you're going to get another lottery pick in a draft that's supposed to be deeper than this one. And you have the most coveted asset in basketball, at least that's been openly floated out there in the trade market, in Damian Lillard. So you could get even more lottery picks, even more impact players, veterans potentially. Like, you know how many teams would give anything to be in Portland's position? By the way, you could get some even more young players. You can get more young players from that trade aside from just the lottery picks. Like, teams would love to be in Portland's situation. So, according to Chris Haynes, who has he knows Damian. He knows Damian Lillard very well. He reported today that Lillard and his representation, so his agent, people like that, are meeting with the Portland Trailblazers today. Don't know if that meeting is ongoing, if it's already happened, if it's going to happen later tonight, who knows? But we do know that they are meeting or have already met today. And also I hope I'm not misquoting, I think this also came from Chris Haynes. Dame has high interest in playing for the Miami Heat. And Dame has alluded to that fact on social media. I don't know if you follow Dame on Instagram, he's a great follow on IG. He goes on IG Live a lot. Take notes, John. Dame went on IG Live playing Will Smith's Welcome to Miami, which is a good one, by the way. And Jimmy Butler, on his Instagram stories, play one of Dame's famous songs. Dame is the best rapper in the NBA, and it's not even close. Dame is incredible. Like, he could retire from the NBA today and be a professional rapper. He's that good. He's not just out here masquerading. No, He's got flow, no question about it. But Dame plays Welcome to Miami, and Jimmy Butler, in response, screenshots a picture of him listening to one of Dame's songs on his IG story. So, like, very, the NBA doesn't like tampering, certainly open tampering, but this is about as close as you're going to get. Jimmy obviously wants Dame, and Dame, it would appear, according to reports, according from his own Instagram, and that wasn't by accident, by the way. That was very intentional. NBA players, professional athletes, well-known people are very calculated in certain decisions they make in regards to what they want to happen with their careers. So how would Dame fit Miami? Well, that's irrelevant until they get the deal done. So the best case for Miami is they keep Jimmy and Bam. Like, if they lose one of them, that's going to be very hard to replace, especially if you lose. I think it'd be more detrimental. Honestly, and I love Jimmy. I think it'd be more detrimental to lose Bam because that's your only good defensive big. Heck, it's your only big. No disrespect, Cody Zeller, but man, that was hard to watch during the finals. You guarding Nikola Jokic. At least Bam's a defensive player of the year candidate caliber type of player. Cody Zeller is not. If you're able to keep Jimmy and Cody Zeller, you're looking at a deal with guys like Caleb Martin, who had a big-time Eastern Conference Finals. Could Duncan Robinson be included in a type of deal? And I don't know if Portland would take on his contract. That's the only question about it. Miami just took Jaquez, who I love, out of UCLA in the draft. He's like a perfect, Pat Riley pick. It'd be nice for Miami if they kept him, but if Portland wants him, you do whatever you got to do to get Dame. Maybe you include him in the deal, maybe a couple more first-round picks. Like, that's about what the deal would look like for Damian Lillard if you were to keep Jimmy and Bam. And what Portland wants at this point, assets. It's all they want. They want young players, and they want future first-round draft picks. Now, how would Dame fit Miami? What would that do for the landscape of the Eastern Conference in terms of teams we think can contend for and win a championship? So you're talking about Milwaukee, you're talking about Boston. Again, I think Miami, with or without Dame, is in that mix. I mean, they just go to the finals, a month ago. This month. The NBA season feels like it ended 3 months ago for some weird reason. Off season's flying by. But you think about, again, I don't know if the Knicks will be contenders next year, but if they were to make that deal for Karl Anthony Towns, trade Julius Randle for Cat, all of a sudden, that's an interesting basketball team, and we'll see what happens with Josh Hart as well. Cleveland's getting better. Finally made the playoffs post-LeBron. Got a good young core there with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Good coach. So, you got some solid teams. Now, Atlanta, I don't buy at all. They just trade John Collins. I don't really know what Atlanta's intentions are right now as an organization. They're kind of in that sports purgatory, like right in the middle. But you've got a good number of contenders out east. Philadelphia, sorry, I'm not buying them until they get to a conference finals. If Miami adds Damian Lillard, while keeping Jimmy and Bam, they are the favorites to win the Eastern Conference, bar none. You're telling me a team, again, this would it would be barring a Milwaukee would have to make some kind of insane move. So would Boston, for that matter. For me to say, okay, yeah, they're better than Miami. So Miami, with no Jimmy, gentlemen swept the Bucks. You can say, well, Giannis missed 2 games. Well, Milwaukee had a double-digit lead in both games 4 and 5. Giannis played bad in the fourth quarter. Jimmy played awesome. Role players stepped up, and Miami won that game. Or both games, rather, and won the series. So you're telling me a team that just beat Milwaukee, just beat the Knicks, who I think will be better, but just beat the Knicks, and just beat the Celtics. They're going to add a top 10 player in the NBA, and they're not the favorites? For the record, I think Milwaukee's going to be better next year. We'll see if they retain Middleton. I wouldn't be shocked if they decide to let him walk, maybe pull off a sign-and trade with somebody. Maybe in Indiana or something. Maybe add a Buddy Hield, add a shooter for Giannis. Think that'd make a lot of sense. We'll see. But I think Milwaukee's going to be better. Boston just added Porzingis. They still don't have a true point guard. Don't know if they're going to add one or not, but if healthy, Porzingis does make them a better team. They're a better team today than they were yesterday or when they made the Porzingis trade, although Smart was obviously one of their best perimeter defenders and locker room guys. But you had Dame. Again, we're talking like, are they the favorites to win the title? Now, that argument to me would come down to Denver and Miami. Like those two, because Denver's the champions, rolled through the playoffs, weren't really challenged at any step of the way. Again, I know they were tied 2-2 with Phoenix. They beat them badly in games 5 and crushed them in game 6. Denver also smoked Miami in the NBA Finals. Does Dame make that big difference? Well, you will obviously also lose depth. Now, if we know anything about Miami, they're not Phoenix, by the way. I'll get to Phoenix in just a second with DeAndre Ayton. If we know anything about Miami and anything about Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, they squeeze every single drop out of whatever they have. Like whoever is playing for the Miami Heat, if you're a Heat fan, we are getting the absolute best out of this guy, be it Jimmy on down. So that's going to be the case with Dame. I don't think the bench will be a huge concern. I'd like to see them add maybe a wing or two, although Jimmy and Dame will take up a ton of the salary cap, so we'll see what happens with that. But the fit makes all the sense in the world. It's a guy to, give Jimmy a breather from time to time. Dame can play off ball. Jimmy's a solid facilitator. I think he averaged like 6 assists during the playoffs, so he can get other guys involved. Damian can hide defensively, and Jimmy take the best guy, which he did oftentimes during the playoffs. Bam, depending on the matchup, can take the best guy. I think it makes all the sense in the world from a fit perspective, and I think it would make Miami the favorites to win the Eastern Conference. Matter of fact, if they make the deal, barring any other crazy moves by Boston, I don't think Boston can make any crazy moves, or Milwaukee, I'm probably going to pick the Heat to go to the NBA Finals. They just made it, and they would have added a top 10 player. So I'm not going to go out and say this deal seems inevitable, but as the reports continue to change, and again, why this trade wasn't done earlier, I'm not talking about this offseason. I'm talking about last year before that. Like the fact that we're just now getting this stage, the fact that Dame wasted 2 years of his prime in Portland, and that's not a shot at Portland, but Dame's a type of player you want to see compete for championships. It's the best for both sides. This isn't a situation where a guy carries an organization, asks for a trade, and it's like, oh man, we're going to be screwed when we move this guy. It doesn't matter what we get in return. We're a crappy run franchise. No. Portland's a very well-run franchise. They are. They draft well. Rarely do they, and again, Portland's sort of like think of them as the Pittsburgh Steelers with no championships. Like Pittsburgh, if there's one thing they never suck. Ever. Same thing with Portland. They do suck from time to time, but they tend to rebuild quickly. Same with the Utah Jazz. Again, who just got John Collins today. For Portland, you go all in on the young core, all in on the rebuild, and God knows the assets you'll get from a Dame trade. You'll get minimum 2 first-round picks, along with likely some younger players like Caleb Martin, like maybe Duncan Robinson, albeit the contract's not all that attractive, and maybe the Hawkes kid that they just drafted, who I really, really like. I think he'd be a good fit in Portland as well. Good score off the dribble. And then for Dame, now he gets a chance to compete for a championship. For really the first time in his career. I know 2019, they got to the Western Conference Finals. They were never beating Golden State. Like, that team just wasn't good enough. But wasn't that they played poorly? No, just Golden State was, even with no KD, because KD got hurt in the series before that, Golden State was just better team. There's no shame in losing in that series. This will be the first time that Dame will have truly had an opportunity to compete for championships. And as a longtime Dame fan, I'm here for it. Although I hope it's in the Eastern Conference that Golden State doesn't have to go through him to win the title. Although, then again, I just thought about this. And I love Dame, by the way, but Steph is 10-0 against Damian Lillard in the playoffs. So there's that. But again, I think it makes sense from a fit standpoint for Miami and for Portland. Go all in on the rebuild. Now, also, again, this is an NBA offseason show. Not a ton of it. This is probably the driest time of the year in NFL news, because that dead space between OTAs, minicamp, and training camp, which starts in about a month and a few days, and then that's when NFL talk will really ramp up with training camp battles, and then preseason starts, and see what these rookies look like. So not a ton of NFL, likely all this week, but that'll be dependent on if there's any moves. John Rivera looks like it's going to be Miami. All the signs point to that. Miami's interested. Dame, according to Chris Haynes, is interested. Dame and his reps have met with Portland today. And again, that's something else too that is a factor as well. Dame's given 11 years to that franchise. Like he's gotten the playoffs year in and year out, has 2 series-ending buzzer beaters on his resume. Only Michael Jordan can say that in NBA history. Got him to a Western Conference Finals in 2019. Like, Dame maxed out what he could have gotten out of the Portland Trailblazers experience, given what was around him. And again, I'm hearing the whole, if they add Zion, Zion makes him better, but I'm not sure he's going to be available. That's the biggest question for him. And also, Portland was at the bottom of the league in just about every category, both offensively and defensively. You think Zion is going to elevate them into, Portland could win the West? No. He got the most that he could out of the Portland experience. Now it's time to see him compete for championships. But what I was going to say, though, is that the Blazers are obviously very appreciative. The fans love Dame. Dame loves the fans. Dame said it would mean more to win a championship in Portland. Like, I remember when Giannis won in Milwaukee, like he said, man, I want to do that for Portland. And I respect that. I respect that from a loyalty perspective, but still, listen, Portland is going to be loyal to Dame in this situation. They're gonna put him in position where they say, hey, Dame, where do you want to go? And if Dame says Miami, for example, all right, we'll do the absolute best we can to send you to Miami. They'll negotiate in good faith because it's not like a bad blood type of situation. No. And John Rivera says, same for Cat, time to move on. Yeah, Cat to the Knicks is what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to be a Julius Randle for Karl Anthony Towns trade. That seems the most likely. And plus, I think for Minnesota, it's because Cat's an all-star level player. Like, he's still very, very productive. If it weren't for the likes of Jokic and Embiid, and we'd be talking about this guy as like the premier center in all basketball, potentially. Although I think Victor Wembanyama is going to be in that third or fourth best center group next season. I think he's going to be awesome. And for Minnesota, go all in on Anthony Edwards. Like, this is their future. This is the guy you're going to build around, see what you can do. Now, it's Minnesota, so this is not Portland we're talking about. This is Minnesota. They're going to find a way to screw it up because that's typically what Minnesota tends to do. But I would like to see Cat in a different destination, no doubt. I think given the spot, he could be the second best player in a championship team. Cat's not the type of guy to lead you there, but I think he could be the second best player. I do. Speaking of centers, speaking of productive centers, let's talk about DeAndre Ayton and the Phoenix Suns, who, according to reports, Ayton is going to stay in Phoenix. Frank Vogel, who's the new head coach there, has convinced Phoenix Suns front office to keep DeAndre Ayton. So barring an offer that comes to Phoenix that's, too good to pass up on, it appears Ayton is going to be with the Suns this season. Again, he still has 3 years left in his deal. I mean, I saw reports. I reacted to this on social media the other night that the Suns were attempting a DeAndre Ayton for Tobias Harris trade. I'm like, are they trying to make it as difficult as possible to win a championship? Like, Tobias Harris is a very productive player. He's a horrendous fit in Phoenix, especially if you give up Ayton. Now you have no bigs. But listen, I think it's the right decision for Phoenix to keep Ayton. Because the fact of the matter is, his market isn't that great. Again, you saw what the Suns got for what the Wizards got for Bradley Beal. Again, the Wizards aren't a well-run franchise. You saw what the Wizards got for Chris Paul. Now, who's more valuable today, Chris Paul or Ayton? I'd still go Chris Paul. But listen, DeAndre Ayton didn't exactly change a franchise when he joined Phoenix. Chris Paul did, so that's an entirely different story. If Phoenix didn't keep Ayton, if they decided to move him, and it would have depended on who they moved him for, then where would they have been? Because now you would have had often injured Kevin Durant, often injured Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, who's tremendous, but he's not a point guard. He's a better version of Bradley Beal. That's what he is. You would still have no point guard. You'd have Tobias Harris coming in if you were to move him in that trade, and you have no big man. No big and no point guard. That doesn't seem crazy to me. I just think weird this way. That doesn't seem like the formula to win championship in the NBA. It's funny. You have a team that just won the championship. They had an awesome point guard and an out of this world center. Again, and I said this I said this last Monday when the Beal trade was done. It baffles me because the NBA, like all leagues, is a copycat league. It baffles me that Phoenix looked at that and said, you know what? We are going to build the exact opposite way. How Denver did it, let's do it the other way. I don't get that. But they're keeping Ayton. What does that mean? Well, it means they're going to be forking a lot of money to 4 guys, not even the whole starting lineup. KD, Beal, Booker, Ayton. Those 4 guys alone take up 75% of the salary cap. For the record, here are the other 4 players. Here's the starting point guard for Phoenix and 3 guys who are currently signed to Phoenix. Here's their bench. Their starting point guard is going to go from Chris Paul to Cameron Payne. And Cam Payne's a nice player coming off the bench, good scorer. He's not a starting point guard on an NBA champion. He's not. Here's their bench. Jordan Goodwin, Ish Wainwright, and Isaiah Todd. Reportedly, the Suns are going to work out 2 players. Jabari Parker and Stanley Johnson. That's their bench. If they make a move for one or both of those guys. That's at best the 4th best team in the West. I'd taken Denver over them. I'm taking the Lakers over them, and I'm taking the Warriors over them in a heartbeat. Phoenix is trapped. The Suns were already, and I defended him, by the way. A lot of folks were criticizing them when they made the move for Kevin Durant, like, he struggles to stay healthy, all this, all that. They give up all their assets, Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges and all these players. I said, this is Kevin Durant we're talking about. Like, this is one of the 5 best basketball players on earth, and you still got a good structure around him. You got Chris Paul, you got Devin Booker, Ayton, good coach Monty Williams. And they fired Monty Williams, which, by the way, that's another reason I keep Ayton, is because the issues between Ayton and Monty Williams. Well, Monty Williams isn't there, so why would you trade Ayton, especially when you have no other bigs? But you fire Monty Williams. You move Chris Paul, which I defend. I get it. He's getting up there in age. He's a bench player now. That's why he's going to be a perfect fit in Golden State. You got the 2 guys to build around. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker. Potentially get cap space. You could move Ayton for some assets. You could move Chris Paul for some assets. And instead you choose, let's get another 20-point per game scorer who can't stay healthy and plays no defense. And now we don't have a bench or a point guard. Phoenix's, and I talked about this during the playoffs, during the Clippers series, and definitely during the Nuggets series in the second round, where it's, okay, Phoenix's strategy this offseason, they've got 2 superstar level players in KD and Book. Build around those guys. Surround them with competent bench players. Get them a legit point guard. If you were to make a deal for somebody out there, maybe that works. And by the way, I think Frank Vogel's a good coach. I defended Frank Vogel like crazy when all these Lakers fans talk about fire Vogel. It's like, Vogel ain't the issue. You got a bad roster. Doesn't work. He fits well in Phoenix now, but Vogel's in a very similar position where it's like, what I got to work with. Katie's awesome. Booker's awesome. Beal's very productive. And Ayton is good from night to night. What am I going to do outside of that? In a Western Conference with very deep teams, Denver's incredibly deep. Lakers, if they retain some of their key pieces, are deep. Golden State is deep and going to get deeper. I don't know. Like, I for the life of me, I don't get what Phoenix is doing. I defend them keeping Ayton. I think they're in a position. It's kind of like Kyrie in Dallas. I read the report last week that the Mavs are reportedly the only team that's interested in Kyrie. It's like, that's because they have to be. They can't trade all of their assets away. Get Kyrie. Their season goes to hell, basically. And then they move on from Kyrie. And then Luka's going to be sitting here like, we gave up all these guys for 2 months of disaster, and then he walks out the door. Like, what are we doing? So Dallas has to keep Kyrie. They don't have a choice. Phoenix is kind of in that same position with Ayton where, because they now have no assets, they kind of have to keep him. So I kind of get a kick out of it. It's pretty funny. And for my Warriors, it's one less team we got to worry about. Same could be said for the Lakers and the Nuggets. And you may ask, do you see any other contenders in the Western Conference? I don't buy the Clippers. They can't stay healthy. Kawhi can't stay healthy. Paul George can't stay healthy. I don't buy them in the slightest. And they may re-sign Westbrook. Sacramento, they're going to need to get more wing defenders. They're a little too guard reliant, which gives you a kind of a hard cap in the NBA. I think OKC is going to be good. I think OKC is going to be a playoff team this year. New Orleans, I want to like New Orleans so bad, but the Zion component, it just is weird. I don't know what's going to come of that. Dallas may make the playoffs, but I do not see them as a contender at all. So I really see 3, maybe 4, maybe if 2 months into the season, depending on how they play, maybe you can convince me into Sacramento, given what they showed me in these playoffs, despite losing to Golden State. But it really feels like it's a Denver, LA, Golden State Western Conference this year. Like, from the second they made the Beal trade, I'm like, okay, Phoenix is out. They're done. Let's see. Do we have any news? Also just saw a Twitter update. Nope. Okay. By the way, again, the free agency special is on the Carving It Up free agency special Friday, same time as usual, shows 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific time. But the beauty of it is, and thank you, Adam Silver, thank you, NBA, free agency starts right when my show starts. And we know when free agency starts, you hear all the time about, hey, negotiations aren't legal until 6 o'clock. And then 6 o'clock hits. This person signed a deal. This person, extension, 3-year deal, 5-year deal, $100 million. It's like, yeah, I'm sure they negotiated in 5 seconds. It's like that. Like, that's why I hate the tampering rules in the NBA. It's like, guys, these teams are tampering already. Like, if you're trying to put a lid on that, like, Come on, that's not going to work. I kind of got a kick out of that. But again, a carving up free agency special is Friday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific time. We're going to have some guests. Looking forward to that. But, and again, I've actually I got my notes ready. So to have it in advance is sort of helped my Warriors a little bit. I don't know if you can see there. Got all the free agents that are available. And you see it's the checks. I don't know if you can see the checks with some of the guys that have either been traded or signed. Like Naz Reid yesterday. I was kind of hoping my Warriors would pick up Naz Reid because Naz Reid is a Warriors killer, man. He plays amazing every time he plays us. But he's just re-signed in Minnesota, got a 3-year, $42 million deal. So congrats to him on getting the bag. Very, very good back. Probably the best backup center maybe in basketball. So good for him. Patrick, your thoughts on Atlanta trading John Collins for Rudy Gay? Well, Rudy's an aging player. I don't know if Atlanta's going to keep him long term. They may just go ahead and buy him out. And if a team wants to pick up, like maybe later in free agency, like in August, September training camp time, maybe someone decides to pick him up. He's a good veteran presence. Not obviously not near as productive as he used to be in his prime. As for John Collins to the Jazz, I mean, listen, we knew John Collins was on the trading block for about a year and a half in Atlanta, so it makes sense. But look, Utah's got another young player. They didn't have to give up a ton for him. I like it. Listen, John Collins is a walking double-double. He's a typical, what he averaged, 15 and 10 last year? I'm going to check his numbers because I wasn't planning to talk about John Collins, but I'm glad you asked, Patrick. Let's check John Collins. Where is he here? All right, John Collins this past season. Oh, wow, he averaged 6 rebounds. That's kind of surprising, to be honest with you. How many games did he play? Wow, I played 71 games. That's shocked he only averaged 6 rebounds. John Collins typically is a double-double machine, kind of like his former teammate, Clint Capella. But that is the most surprising look at a stat sheet that stat sheet that I've ever seen by a player live on this show. That actually surprised me. But no, I think he works for the Jazz. They're trying to build around a young core. They've got Sexton, obviously Markkanen, who's serving in the military overseas for his country. Is he Finnish? I think he's from Finland. I could be wrong. I don't want to screw that up. But I know Markkanen serving overseas. Hang on, Lauri Markkanen. Where is he from? He is from he's Finland. Yeah. So he's in the Finnish military, which I think is a requirement. So, but he'll be back reportedly before training camp. So you got him, you got Colin Sexton, you got THT. Listen, Utah's got some nice young players, and God knows they have a ton of draft picks. Because if there's anything Danny Ainge knows how to do, it's get draft picks. Obviously, we all remember the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett trade to the Brooklyn Nets 10 years ago. I can't believe that was 10 years ago. Time flies. And they got all those assets, and what do they get? Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So I think it's safe to say Boston won that trade by a lot. But yeah, I think Collins works for Utah. But yeah, Collins off the board. I did have Collins, so I have it listed as I got my guards, my forwards, and then my centers. Again, you see the check marks between Porzingis and Naz Reid since they're on teams now, and then potential trade options. So like Chris Paul's at the top of my list. He's now a Warrior. By the way, can I say this too before I get to my last segment? I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were talking about how Chris Paul would have been a great fit in Boston, which, by the way, I kind of agree with. Like, Chris Paul would be a great fit with, Tatum and Brown and them having a true point guard, but he's a terrible fit in Golden State. What? He's coming off the bench. He plays less games, less minutes. His role is significantly reduced. It's only a 1-year deal. So it's low risk, high reward in all likelihood. Come on, man. And again, he's replacing a guy who's a turnover machine, a cancer in the locker room, and has a horrible basketball IQ. Yeah, what a horrible trade for Golden State. Come on, man. Okay, John Rivera. Bobby Marks just said it will probably take a third team to do the Dame trade. I've thought that for a while. Again, and I said the same thing for Bradley Beal. And it didn't shock me that actually, it was only a 2-team deal for Bradley Beal, wasn't it? I don't know. I can't remember for some reason. But yeah, if Portland wants the best return they can get, then it's going to have to be a 3-team deal. But if they just want to do business with Miami, then they'll do that. And listen, Miami does have assets. We saw some of those young players really stepped up for them in the playoffs, but yeah, that makes the most sense. And I would not be shocked if as soon as tomorrow, Again, I don't have this source. I'm not Brian Windhorst or Adrian Wojnarowski or Sham Sharani or anybody, but I would not be surprised if, given the meeting today, both Dame and Portland comes out tomorrow and say we are seeking a trade. Like, Blazers will say thank you to Dame for 11 great years of playoff wins and all this and clutch shots and great relationship with the fan base. And Dame will say, I'll never forget my 11 years in Portland, but it's time to move on. Kind of similar. Dame's obviously not the player Kevin Garnett was. Kevin Garnett was an MVP, one of the greatest defensive players ever, but a similar situation like that, where you're like on a middle tier team and KG goes to Boston, wins the championship. We all remember anything is possible. And KG later said his biggest regret from his career was not leaving Minnesota sooner. To get to feel that feeling of playing in big games, because he got to a Western Conference Finals early in his career, but they lost to the Lakers. I forget which year that was. Was it 01 or 02? It was in the early 2000s when the Lakers had their three-peat. But he wanted to experience the feeling of playing winning basketball, and hey, who doesn't? Hats off to him. Yeah, John, he says, I'll give it 24 hours. That's what it feels like. Just given the reports, given Dame has camped the Blazers, just drafting Scoot Henderson. Like, are they really going to trot out a backcourt with Scoot and Dame? Like, they don't really work together. They're best apart. Both the Blazers and Dame are best apart. So I'm pulling for both sides because I respect Portland. And although Portland kind of did us dirty on the Gary Payton deal, but that's okay. It happens. And Dame gets a chance to compete for championships. Last topic. Dennis Rodman, 5-time NBA champion, one of the 75 greatest players of all time, one of the greatest defensive players ever, arguably the greatest rebounder, certainly in the modern era. Obviously, Russell and Wilt are in a category of their own. Their rebounding records won't be touched in the history of the NBA. But as far as just the mechanics, remember the meme from The Last Dance of Dennis Rodman, where he was talking about if Bird missed the shot, I go here. If Magic missed the shot, I go here. Like, studying how different players miss shots, how it came off the rim. It was so fascinating to watch. And obviously, Dennis is one of the greatest role players in the history of the game. But he was talking in an interview. If I can pull up the quote, Dennis Rodman was talking in an interview about LeBron. And because Gilbert's just crazy off the wall stuff, so I just come to expect it at this point. But Gilbert Arenas said that Larry Bird would beat LeBron. And again, I'm about to defend Larry Bird in just a second, by the way, so don't get mad at me, Celtics fans. But Bird would not beat LeBron. Like, stop. He wouldn't. LeBron's the greatest small forward in the history of the game. Bird's too. There's nothing wrong with that. I think LeBron's greatest player ever. He's worst case second. So Bird would not beat him. But Rodman was on a recent episode of Vlad TV, and DJ Vlad asked Rodman, this is according to USA Today, on his thoughts about Gilbert Arenas' comments that Bird would beat the NBA's all-time scoring champion LeBron James in a one-on-one matchup. This was Dennis Rodman's quote. If Larry Bird played in this era, I think he'd be in Europe. He'd be somewhere over there. His game was fit for Boston at that time in the 80s and stuff like that. Today's world? Oh, heck no. There's no way. I'm not downplaying him because he's a great player at the time, just like I was. But I'm saying, no, there's no way. Before I get to my vehement disagreement with Rodman, it's weird to hear a 80s, 90s player, especially a very successful player, rip older stars in favor of the newer stars of the current players. Because usually it's the other way around. It's usually like, man, back in my time, these guys wouldn't have survived. You hear that all the time. It's like, oh, come on. NBA is more skilled than it's ever been. But Dennis Rodman was talking about this. He said Larry Bird would be playing in Europe. Like, he wouldn't be good enough basically to be the NBA. Now, that's obviously, that's asinine. Larry Bird is, in my estimation, the 8th greatest player in the history of the game. I've got, in this order, Bron, MJ, Kareem, Kobe, Magic, Steph, Duncan, Bird. I've got Bird a spot above Shaq and above Bill Russell. And two spots above Bill Russell. Obviously, Dennis is wrong about this. Larry Bird, people don't realize this. And again, I obviously was not around for Larry Bird when he played. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson literally saved the NBA. The NBA in the 70s was irrelevant. Nobody gave two craps about the NBA. That's why when people talk about, oh, nobody watches the NBA. I'm boycotting the NBA. It's like, no, people, they didn't boycott in the 70s. They just straight up didn't watch. It wasn't interesting. Outside of the early 70s, where you had those good Knicks teams and the West Wilt Lakers, it was a no-show. Folks, the finals, not some regular season game on a Tuesday night in Sacramento. I don't even know if Sacramento had a team in the 70s. Point being, the NBA Finals, the series to decide the NBA champion. In the 70s, they were on tape delay. Game 5 of the 1976 NBA Finals after your 11 o'clock local news. That's what it was. Nobody watched the NBA. And here comes this tall 6'9" point guard with a big smile and a flashy game out of Michigan State. And this tall, lanky, great shooter kid from Indiana State, and saved the NBA. And there was a lot of factors at play. Obviously, Magic and Bird faced off in the 1979 NBA Finals. And the 1979 men's college basketball national title game when, again, Larry Bird took freaking little old Indiana State to the final. Magic Johnson and the Spartans, Michigan State Spartans, ended up beating them in the final. They both get drafted that year. Magic obviously wins his first championship, the iconic 40-point game with the baby skyhook when Kareem was out for Game 6 against Philadelphia. By the way, can I just say this? Kareem should have won Finals MVP for that series. That's neither here nor there. But Magic won a championship his first year. Then Bird won in 1981. And the Celtics and Lakers won 8 of the 10 NBA championships in the 1980s. Obviously, has some Detroit and Philadelphia mixed in there, but it was a Celtics-Lakers decade in the 1980s, and it saved the NBA. Now, a lot of that had to do with Magic going to LA. Magic's a very flashy, good-looking, entertaining point guard going to the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. And then you've got Larry, who's sort of like a rough, tough, but obviously very skilled player going to a blue-collar city like Boston. Obviously, of course, there was the race element as well. You had a lot of black people rooting for Magic, a lot of white people rooting for Bird. You had that at play as well in the 1980s. But it saved the game. It really helped set up Michael Jordan. And that's not to take a shot at MJ. MJ was probably the greatest player in the history of the game in marketing himself, marketing his brand. Now, Nike had a lot to do with that. Remember the I Like Mike commercial? You had the Spike Lee and all this, and the McDonald's commercials. Jordan does not have that if it's not for Bird and Magic. He doesn't. So they say all that to say, with what Dennis Rodman was talking about, Bird and Magic saved the NBA. I don't know where the league would be today if it weren't for those two. Current stars, fans, coaches, everybody has those two to thank. No doubt about it. Celtics and Lakers in the 80s saved the NBA. Now, what I found ironic about what Dennis said about Bird, I still can't get over that quote. He'd be playing in Europe if he was playing in today's league, which is like, you could say Bird wouldn't beat LeBron one-on-one and not just diss his whole career. But again, Pistons, bad boy Pistons, 80s Celtics had some battles, so I guess you have the component onto it. But let me put up my top 22, because I did this segment for Nikola Jokic. Like, is Jokic a top 20 player ever? I said no, but not by much. I put him at 22nd. There's my 20 greatest players ever. For the podcast, or for those watching, starting with LeBron, going down to 22, Nikola Jokic. For those listening, it goes in this order: LeBron, Michael, Kareem, Kobe, Magic, Steph, Duncan, Bird, Shaq, Russell, Wilt, Hakeem, Dr. J, Moses, KD, Oscar, Jerry West, Giannis, KG, Dirk, Wade, Jokic. Those are my top 22. The reason I had 22 is because that's where I had Jokic after he won this recent NBA Finals. But again, of those top 20 players ever, so you can see I got Dirk in that 20 spot, just a little above Dwayne Wade. Larry Bird, make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah. Larry Bird, among those 20, in my opinion, the 20 greatest players ever. Larry Bird was top four in three-point percentage among those 20 guys. Now, you had some players on there, guys like Wilt and Russell and West, Oscar, there was no three-point line. So obviously you put them aside. But, Shaq wasn't a three-point shooter. Neither was Duncan. Neither was Hakeem. You have guys like that. But if you talk about today's NBA, which it's all about the three, it's all about length, it is all about skill. I think of all the players in the 80s, Bird would have been best suited for today's NBA. Magic would be a very close second. I think Magic could have developed a good... Magic wasn't a bad shooter by any stretch of the imagination, but it really wasn't his game. Didn't have to be his game at that time. But I think Bird, great shooter. People don't remember this. An amazing passer. I mean, some of Bird's passing highlights are incredible by today's standards. Great defender, great leader. Play big in the biggest of games and all those Eastern Conference Finals and NBA Finals. Like Bird would have been would have been a seamless fit in today's NBA. Like he would have been a better version he would have been Dirk, but more agile, a better passer, and a better defender. So imagine Dirk Nowitzki in that mold. That's who Larry Bird would be in today's NBA. So give all the credit in the world to him in that regard. But again, and listen too, does that mean, because I've always said this, like when people get on today's generation of players, like, oh, they wouldn't have survived back in my time. Like I heard a quote by Mark Jackson. I love Mark Jackson. That's my guy. But I heard him say that players at his time were better than today's players. I'm like, oh, come on, coach. Like, why you got to do this? But he made an interesting point. I'm like, I never thought about it that way. That's actually kind of interesting. He said they were better not because they were more skilled, because they were smarter. Like the players back in Mark Jackson's time, 80s, 90s, were smarter basketball players than now. And there's some truth to that. I'd say the coaches also were smarter as well. Like we've got a good number of good coaches currently in the NBA. Obviously, Spo, Steve Kerr, and Pop, and I think Michael Malone. I've always defended him as an excellent coach. But yeah, you do have that component as well. But when people say, oh, this player, I'm talking about like all-time great players, Pantheon greats. Oh, he would have been good in this era. Folks, if you're great, I mean iconic great. Like people say your first or last name, oh, I know you're talking about. If you say Jordan, oh yeah, Michael. Yeah, I know Michael Jordan. Curry, yeah, I know Steph Curry. Like that's Magic Johnson, LeBron. All the names that we know, they didn't be great in any era. Come on, let's not kid ourselves. Remember back in the day hearing about, oh, Steph wouldn't have survived in the 80s. We'd just beat him up. You know what that's code for? We couldn't guard him. That's what that means. We could just beat him up. been physical with him. He'd been able to handle it. You see all the cuts and bruises on Steph's arm? Seriously, like Google a picture of, like a close-up picture of Steph and look at his shoulders. Bro, you're telling me that dude can't take contact? I think Steph and LeBron of superstars in today's league, get the worst whistle, get the worst officiating breaks of any superstars in basketball. And I will die on that hill. No doubt about it. All right, let's see. Patrick Brown, Lakers Celtics was the pinnacle of the NBA 80s. Anyone who grew up in that era knew those teams were on a collision course to meet in the NBA Finals. I was blessed to have seen all-time greats during that time. 86 Celtics were by far the best team during that span. Totally agree with you, Patrick. Much as it pains me to say that, they would have mopped the Lakers in that finals. Yeah, because they beat the Rockets in 1986 with a young Hakeem Olajuwon. 80s, we talk about greatest teams ever. I always say it's 17 Warriors, 96 Bulls, 01 Lakers. Those, to me, the three best teams ever. After that, I got 83 Sixers. Folks, the 83 Sixers already were great with Dr. J, and they added a 3-time MVP in Moses Malone. Like that team, and they had some really good role players as well. That team was stacked. Like they kind of did what Golden State did, where they were really good, and then they added a multiple-time MVP or an all-time great player. I would say Moses Malone's one of the most underrated players in NBA history. Probably the most underrated player. Patrick, despite MJ dropping 63 in the Garden, Boston was still the more supreme than any team in the playoffs. Lakers wanted no part of Boston that year. Yeah. And even the was it the 88 Lakers? No, it was 87 or 88. I forget which year it was, where they were, James Worthy, big game James, Magic was his prime. Kareem was kind of at the tail end of his career, but yeah, those were good teams, no doubt. Like you got to slide the 86 Celtics in that discussion somewhere. Like I would say the top four, 2017 Warriors, 96 Bulls, 01 Lakers, 83 Sixers, and then it's probably either 86 Celtics or 73 Lakers. Or no, 70. It was the early 70s Lakers where they had Jerry West and Wilt. We got to have that discussion one of these days. I need to do a segment. Top 10 teams in NBA history. And NFL history, for that matter. Because then, if NFL history, you're talking about where do you put the 07 Patriots? Like, well, they didn't win the championship. Yeah, but they went 18-0. Like, that's Brady threw 50 touchdowns. Moss said his career year. They had a great defense, loaded with Hall of Famers. Like, 07 Patriots in there somewhere. Had they won, they would have been the greatest team ever. Anyways, we can do these what ifs from here until Jesus comes. I mean, that's what's fun about these barbershop talk type of debates. All that to say, Bird would have been great in any era. Now, would he have beaten LeBron? No. But he would have been great in any era. Just like Bron would have been great. MJ, Magic, Kobe, Steph, Duncan, Shaq. They'd have been great in any era. I hate it when current players today and previous players sort of hate on either generation. That's why I love, last point, I'll get out of here. That's why I love Jerry West. Not just for the fact that Jerry is one of the best players in the history of the game, not just the fact that he's the greatest executive in the history of the game. Like, did you watch his interview with Paul George on the Paul George's podcast? I don't know if there's any player from that era that gives current players their flowers more than Jerry West does. Like, hats off to him. Like, he gets it. Like, he's not out here saying, oh, this dude back in my time. No. Great is great is great. Some guys would have been better suited for certain eras, sure. I think Bird would have been better in today's NBA than he was back then. Like, when I hear, like, oh, Jordan would have averaged 50. No, he would not have averaged 50. Stop. MJ was already great, and MJ would have been great in today's era. Michael Jordan was not averaging 50 points in today's NBA. Like, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. No player would average 50. Whew. All right, off my soapbox. Actually, seriously, this is my last thought, and I promise I'm out of here. I promise. Because I was thinking about this today when I was researching this Dennis Rodman Larry Bird thing. Can you imagine if sports talk radio and television, and obviously podcasting didn't exist at the time Rodman was playing, can you imagine if, like, sports media, sports talk media was as prominent then during Rodman's era as it is now? Can you imagine the coverage that Rodman would have gotten? Like, I kind of got excited. I was like, oh, Dennis Rodman had a big soundbite. I get to talk about it. Can you imagine back then? Oh my gosh. That'd have been a blast. Given, his antics on the court, playing with some of the best players ever in Detroit and Chicago. And then you got the whole situation with some of his off-court stuff. He'd have been an interesting player to cover. No question about it. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by, as always. I got to admit, this is a show I didn't think I only had 4 topics. I usually have 5. I didn't know if be able to make this show all that interesting, given the limited amount of stories. It was actually I'm not going to lie, this is a fun show today. It's a fun show today. Shout out to everybody in the comments and everybody who watched. Again, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to catch Carving It Up Live on Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, at 3 p.m. Pacific time on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. And be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Podcast Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, here on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any and everywhere you get your favorite podcasts. Please check out the other amazing content creators here on this network, as well as Carving It Up Live. NBA free agency is nearly upon us. My 20th birthday. Sounds weird to say. I started carving up when I was 16 years old. My 20th birthday this Wednesday. So I'll be a 20-year-old doing a podcast this Thursday. That's going to be weird. But Carving Up NBA free agency special on Friday. Free agency tips off at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific time. That is exactly the time when our show starts. So definitely tune in. We're going to have some special guests. Looking forward to that. Have a great week, everybody. Please continue to stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. We've got to address this, folks. We've got to fix this. Have a great week, y'all. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. Be 20. Can you believe that? Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.